I went back in time, and it was exciting and fun. And going back, walking back in that tunnel was quite exciting. And I was thrown back in time to the French Revolution, and I played the part of a French officer who was an ancestor of mine, of the character. And so it was fun both being in the present and the past in the same show. So I had that experience, and I found it was hard work to stay in the Frenchman, but it was good. It was fun. Generally speaking, I think it was historically accurate, which is good because if you're going to appeal to young people, it's terrible to give them a phony idea of what that thing was, whatever it was. No, I think that Irwin had writers who stuck very closely to the. I may be wrong, but that's my opinion anyway, my remembrance. And I think the scripts for the future were a little more difficult for him to sell, to work out. Because it was oriented, really the whole show was oriented toward that thing of the past, the time tunnel, not going out into the future, but going back in time. And I think this idea of time travel will always intrigue the inquisitive mind of a child or of an adult writer. It's a fascinating idea. Can it possibly exist? Can there be somebody floating around somewhere now still in that thing we call time? Is it possible? You know, all these things. And to an imaginative young person, they just begin to think about it. But an older person, is there such a thing? Could there be? That's what's intriguing.
I think it was a 6-day shoot on the show, and usually 1 day was for the tunnel and 5 days were for the exteriors and all the happenings. We didn't have time to think ahead. Thank God Irwin did, because with about 3 shows at one time going, the man was a genius, and he hired good people around him. And we would come in and just be amazed at what we were going to be called upon to do the next week. I don't remember at that time of thinking of shows that I might particularly like to do, which I think if we'd gone in second and third year, all of us might have come up with some suggestions, and I'm sure Irwin would have listened to them. But when you're there from 7 in the morning until maybe 8, 9 at night, on any good day, 14-hour day was nothing. You didn't spend much time thinking about the next script, let alone what you personally would like to inject into it. And every script that came out was very interesting, because, I mean, when you're in Krakatoa one day, you're on the moon the next. And being an anthology series like that, where every week you had a whole different cast. Jimmy and I were out there. The tunnel was fairly consistent. They brought Sam Groom in at one time as one of the new tunnel technicians, and there weren't a great deal of changes inside the framework of the tunnel. But outside, Jimmy and I would run into an entirely new cast of people every week, and some fabulous performers. People who went on to, like Robert Duvall and Mako, and you name it. There's some wonderful, wonderful people that would, and every week we would be more excited about wondering who the cast was and who we were going to be working with, because we were fans too, you know. And there we were. We never really knew till about the time we got in wardrobe who was going to be playing the show that week. Really? So that made it really, really fun. I mean, it wasn't like suiting up and going into work with a set framework. Our fourth wall was real deep. My brother was my stuntman. Started out, Paul Stater was my stuntman, and Paul was wonderful. He was good, but my brother looked so much like me. Even if his voice was exactly like mine, if I'd have been sick one day, I think he could have been Doug Phillips. But he was an incredible stuntman, and he took most of those really hard lumps, although we would always have to come in and do that last 3 or 4 rolls, and boy, I've come off some barrels real hard from time to time. I remember several times when I went home feeling like I was a professional wrestler. Because there was a lot of action in the show, too, aside from just the entrance. The entrance was, some of the easiest things that we did, but we were always in the middle of a sword fight, a fist fight, or something going on. I got hit in the head with a bench one day in some fight scene, and they had to send me off to the hospital and sew up my head. But I was back there in an hour on that set shooting, and it was just like nothing ever happened. We just keep on going. We weren't action-adventure guys. We were scientists, and we were hurled into this scenario on a scientific basis. So we get out there, and we're not looking for a fist fight. We're not looking to, change mankind. We were scientifically looking at this thing, and then all of a sudden, here we are, Arnold Schwarzenegger's predecessor. So, I'm a doctor. I hate to hit you, but I'm going to do it anyway. I think if we had been able to go on, it would have been a situation where we would have been able to control our destiny a little more. I think we would have been able to interact with the tunnel. We would have been able to come back and go out maybe on select assignments that we wanted to, or a little more direction. That would have been beneficial to the dialogue, because we wouldn't have been going into a situation each week, as you say, trying to explain our unrealistic existence in the middle of a bunch of toga-robed people there, and in a Norfolk jacket. Oh boy! So it would have been a little different and a little easier for the writers. I mean, it's hard for a writer to reach back and pick up on a redundant element of surprise every week, or maybe 10 times within the segment itself. There would be the incredulity of our even being there. So I think that would have changed, but you're right. It was difficult for us as well, because there was a great deal of repetition out there that we had to deal with and make realistic. Well, there was a lot of production in our show. I mean, we were at a major studio, 20th Century Fox. We had the finest crews, the finest stages, the finest sets, the finest location shots. And from our close-up vantage point, it was all so classy and so well done. It was not like doing a Western at Ziv. This was some, pretty stylish stuff going on there. And I got right into it and felt very comfortable with whichever way they sent us, because you were so absorbed in all of this. I mean, and it was not small scale. We had huge sets and lots of expense in this thing. So I'd go into work, and I'd be more enthralled with what the new cast and all of the things that were going on than I would be thinking about how things might be. But Irwin was one of those people who could spread himself thin. Yes, he had that going, and believe me, while he had those 3 shows going, he had Land of the Giants in preparation. He had the storyboards going. He was on into other projects. I don't know how hands-on Irwin was after he got things going, other than I'm sure he observed everything, but he did delegate authority, and to a lot of good people. And he kept a family around him that was very tight. And boy, we were all tired. He had an enormous energy. I can imagine, like Paul Z. Paul Z, he would get in there about 5 o'clock every morning, and he was our wardrobe and the designer and everything. And this man would be the first one on the set and the last one to leave, and then he'd be over doing other shows. And I don't think Paul had 4 hours sleep in 5 years. But, that was just all part of it. I mean, you were in a horse race, and you weren't looking to see who was chasing you. You were just going flat out.
Irwin's thing was the sell. That's what he did. Okay? That's what he did really well. I mean, he did everything well. But his sell was the key, I believe. He would sell something. He was a great salesperson. Great. He'd sell anything.
I don't think...
No. I was approached by my agent at William Morris for the Time Tunnel. They told me about the series and that Irwin Allen wanted me to be part of that show. And I really wasn't interested because I didn't want to do television. It was 1966. And then, having turned it down, of course, then Irwin called me direct, and that was the first time I'd met him when I came into the 20th to discuss this part of Tony Newman in the Time Tunnel. And he was a very interesting character, because I walked into this grand office with this grand desk and this man sitting behind the desk, he had quite a bit of magic. There was something about Irwin that, you listen to every word he said, I'll tell you. He had quite a bit of magic. When he spoke, you listened to every word. You know, he was intriguing. He knew so much about everything that it was hard, when I talked to him about not wanting to do it because of television, no matter what my thoughts were, what my beliefs were, he had the ability to talk me, or to persuade me, that was his salesmanship again, into why I should be doing it, why it would be a good thing to do. And he was right. He was absolutely right. There were very few times Irwin Allen was wrong. I don't know if I was really intrigued until I actually started working on it, because once I committed to doing it, I of course wanted to do it, and it was something that was an interesting project. It wasn't something that really intrigued me. But once I got on the set, we did the Titanic. That was the pilot episode, which Irwin directed, and it just had a very good feel about it. And once I got into it and realized even more about what this whole time travel thing was about and how interesting it could be week after week, then it became intriguing to me. Then it became something that I really wanted to do, because I couldn't wait for what might happen next week, script-wise. You know, something come in, we would travel to the assassination of Abraham Lincoln, or whatever it might be. And those things were really intriguing to me. Irwin said to me that if he could direct robots, it would be great. Because I don't think that he was too fond of actors. Because actors had, or some had their own opinion or their own way of doing something. And Irwin had his, and he had a specific plan for the way this actor should play or be or appear in a role. With me, when I played a scientist, when I played Tony Newman, I mean, to Irwin, scientists did not laugh. Scientists had very short sideburns. Scientists combed their hair very neatly back. So when I would let my sideburns grow down a little bit, which I liked better than I did short sideburns, Irwin would get very upset. And he'd call me on the set. He'd call me on the stage, and he'd say, "Jimmy, have you let your sideburns grow?" And I'd say, "No." "Now, don't lie to me." I said, "I'm not lying to you. I don't believe I have." Of course, I was lying to him. So he'd say, "I'm coming right down." And I'd say, "Oh, okay." Now I'd go to the makeup department, and I'd say, "Irwin's coming in to check me over." Jesus, what the hell am I going to do? And he said, "Well, I think if we put a white line under your sideburn, it'll look like you cut them. So let's do that." So the makeup department would put like a little white line right under my sideburn. And everyone would come down, and he'd look at me, he'd really examine me. It was like, wow, like under a microscope. He'd look at my sideburn. "Well, I guess you're right. I guess they are cut. Yeah, they are short." And they weren't, though, of course, you know. So there were ways to deceive him. There were ways to trick Irwin, even though he knew everything. There were little ways to get around him, you know. I remember on the pilot of the Time Tunnel, we were way over. We shot some 16, 17-hour days, you know. But then again, it was the pilot, and you know, you try everything you can to make this as great as possible, as perfect as possible. So, but I don't remember him ever really coming down on directors. You know, I mean, I've been in situations where I've seen producers come down and just pull the plug, pull the director off the set. I'd never remember that with Irwin. He'd come down and do this. That's for sure. He'd do that. Look at them, point to the watch, and then walk off. But you know, it's interesting. I think they were like the early Quakes of California. When they said Irwin's coming down to the set, the set would go. Everybody would be trembling because they knew that he had the power and he would use it. We all know that Pearl Harbor happened, and that we could never have stopped it from happening because it is part of history. But this situation within that horrible thing at Pearl Harbor was what was interesting to me as an actor, to go there and to see myself as a child, and then to see my dad, who I had not seen since that time, because of course he was killed in Pearl Harbor, or at Pearl Harbor. So that made it great for me, as an actor, to be able to play that. It was wonderful. I mean, I loved it. I loved it. It was certainly one of my favorite episodes. I think about it now, and I think about what a nice, actors have certain things they like to play, and that was something I loved. I really believe that the ways to go were limitless. I mean, we could have gone to a parallel universe. We could have traveled outside of our universe and met us, or gotten into a situation that was another time tunnel. Anything. It could have just gone on. There was no limit to where it could have gone. And I think that would have been a very interesting way to go, because it just would have opened it up and made it very entertaining to the audience and very interesting to us as actors to play. You can't get caught in the rut, and sometimes you take the easy way out, and the easy way out could be, what's the cheapest thing to do? What's the least expensive thing to do? And that sometimes happens to a show. It's unfortunate. It usually happens after the third, fourth year, when they run out of ideas and they say, well, look, we could do this for X amount of dollars, and it's still a show. It may not be as good, but who cares after 4 years? I don't know why, to this day, I wore that turtleneck sweater, the green turtleneck sweater. What was that part of? Why was Tony Newman, who was a scientist, wearing this kind of hip Beatles kind of garb, with my gray pants and my boots? I had little, whatever those boots with the Cuban heels were at that time, that Billy Joel sings about now, and a green turtleneck sweater, and Bob with that jacket on, that suit, that tweed or whatever the heck it was, suit. I mean, they were kind of strange choices, that wardrobe. I thought anyway. I don't know what the alternative could have been. Probably a million things, but I don't know why the hell I ever wore that turtleneck sweater.
How about was it?
It was a killer, because what happened was, it was wool to begin with. It wasn't cotton. It was wool, because of course wool would last a lot longer. When I say last longer, when you could wear it all day, and it wouldn't get out of shape, But what happened was, it was bothering me around the neck, so I had them install a zipper in the turtleneck, and I had them line the turtleneck with silk, so that it wasn't wool against my neck, but it was silk, something that was easier on my skin than wool, and it wasn't cashmere, I could tell you that. So it was not terribly comfortable at times, but with the zipper I could open it up and let it fall open, and of course not have this thing around my throat all day. And then with the silk, it just, when I did have it zipped up, it was much more comfortable. I think that Irwin shows were shows that allowed you to become involved, but in a fantasy. And it was an escape. And there's something really.
Sorry, if you can go back to that.
Yeah.
Irwin, better Irwin shows allowed you to be.
Yeah.
Sorry. Hold tape. So we were talking about.
Where his shows, Irwin's shows were geared to fantasy. I mean, time travel, whatever, Lost in Space, City Beneath the Sea, that kind of stuff. So it's all part of fantasy. You get involved in the stories, but by the same token, it's not really real. It's real, but you can escape in it. I look at some of the stuff. I was reading, I don't know if it was Newsweek or Time, and there's a new film now called, I think, Executions or something, where they actually have like 40 executions on this film. And I know a lot of people are talking about violence in films and things like that, and of course there's always going to be some, but that kind of stuff scares the hell out of me. I think about kids seeing how callous would you become if you could see people being executed, stoned to death, whipped to death, shot to death, beaten to death. I mean, it's like, oh, I've seen that. Yeah. I mean, it's incredible that we're exposing our people, our young people, to that kind of stuff. That it's available in the store is amazing to me. How the hell could that possibly happen? Getting back to Irwin stuff, you see that show and you get involved in it, and it's fun, it's entertaining, and you went out, you leave having a good time.
Actually, it was a wall with concentric circles, just like the one you see behind me. And that was all that was there. We never saw any of the special effects. We acted a lot to little sticks with little round circles and faces drawn on them. For one would be Jimmy and one would be Bob. and we would pretend that they were in some sort of peril usually, and that was what we did most of the time, and played with a lot of fun dials and made squiggly noises and squiggly lines, and it was great fun. It was a wonderful place to play. It was enormous. It took 2 sound stages. That's my memory of it anyway, that I know part of it went into the next sound stage. It had a hypnotic effect, I think. And you were, just as the characters were drawn into the tunnel and taken back into time or forward into time, so was the audience. And that's what I think made it so popular. It's a shame that it didn't last longer. I really don't know how I was cast in the show. I don't remember ever reading for the part. I had done some work at 20th Century Fox. I was around a lot. I had played Catwoman in the first Batman movie. I had done a movie. I think I had done a movie with John Wayne and Rock Hudson. And I had done A Land of the Giants. Now, as to where that was in the time frame of Time Tunnel, I honestly don't remember. I haven't done my homework. I'm as far as putting everything chronologically together in my life, I've just begun thinking about writing a book, so I haven't done any really heavy-duty work on it. But I don't remember ever reading for the part. I don't remember meeting Irwin until I was on the set. I honestly have no memory of meeting him prior to playing Anne McGregor. My major memory of Irwin is a wonderful memory. He's on a ladder, and he has a metal bucket and a hammer, and he's whirling and whirling and whirling the hammer inside the bucket, making a horrendous noise, wanting and generating, because of this, using this, energy on the set, and noise, and things were happening, and this was what was going on, and he was yelling and screaming and saying, "This is what is happening now. You react to," and all of the extras, all of the atmosphere, the performers, the guest stars, all of the people, because this was not being done in the tunnel. This was part of one of the scenes. I think it was the Titanic, but I'm not really positive. But there was a lot going on, and there was a lot of mayhem and madness. And he was generating this because it was being filmed without sound, so that he could say anything, do anything, but that the cameras, and I think there were 2, maybe 3 cameras working at the same time, getting all of this, people running and yelling and screaming and yelling and jumping and doing all sorts of things. And he was generating this incredible energy. And it was electric, and it worked. If someone had said, "Well, this is the way you do this," I would have said, "Oh, I don't think so. It wouldn't work." But it did. It was so wonderful. He he used it one other time that I remember. It was another scene that involved a lot of activity, and it was, I think, when I think it was the show about Battle of Jericho, and I think one of our directors was ill, and he came in and filled in that day, and he did the same kind of thing, and I happened to be on the set that day, and saw him do that, and it was a very exciting kind of moment, and great fun. The other memory I have of Irwin is I had asked him, I had begged him, did I have to wear ringlets? He wanted, for some reason, he wanted ringlets, or the hairdresser did, or someone did anyway. And I said, do I have to wear? And he said, yes, it's there. I said, well, could I wear just a little more makeup? Because I know that there are certain biochemists and physicists that wear a lot of makeup in their jobs. And he said, no. And I said, well, please, couldn't I just a little bit? And he said, does anyone have Marianne Mobley's phone number? And I said, yes, I do. I have it right here. And I called his bluff, and he laughed hysterically. Everyone did, and we got along famously after that. It was great fun. Good man. I loved the idea of them going back into history, and I thought it would be a wonderful teaching tool for any teacher at home to say, be sure and watch this show because we're going to be studying about this next week. Or, I could see teachers using it all the time. I thought it was wonderful, and I loved being a part of it. And I was working at a big studio, 20th Century Fox, and it was thrilling. And I didn't mind. And actually, I really didn't do the same thing week after week. True, I was playing the same character, and the Bob Colbert and Jimmy Darren were the two men who were always lost, and we were always trying to find them. But they were always getting into different areas, different parts of history, and into various shades of danger. And our only problem was in finding out exactly what kind of danger were they in. And if they hadn't filmed that part yet, then we had to film various degrees of separation between, like, okay, the knife is at Bob's throat. So you react, there. But if the knife is here, well, then it's not as bad. And if the guy is just running at Bob, well, that's, Bob has a chance to get away. So, but they had not filmed that. They didn't know where we would be cut into it. So we had to film varying degrees of reactions, and prayed, and they did. The editors were wonderful, and so we didn't look as bad as we could have if the editors were not up to snuff. I have been forever grateful to Irwin for allowing me to do the series and to be a part of history, and to work with such wonderful, wonderful people as Whit Bissell and John Zaremba, Bob Colbert and Jimmy Darren, and these wonderful directors that we had. We were Martin Sobel and Harry Harris. We were lucky. We were very lucky. And the crew, everyone that worked on the show. We had it was a family. It was a family, and I love them all dearly.